Welcome to Road to Recovery.
Welcome to The Road to Recovery, Advocacy and Insights for Trucking Accidents with Sagi Shaked. Sagi is the founder of Shaked Personal Injury Lawyers and is ranked as one of the top 100 trial lawyers in the United States by the American Trial Lawyers Association. With a wealth of experience in personal injury, wrongful death, and complex litigation cases, he passionately advocates for victims and has recovered multi-million-dollar settlements in damages for his clients. I'm your host, Sophia Morales, and today's episode is the Driver Qualification File, Trucking's Hidden Time Bomb. So we're diving into this Driver Qualification File. I imagine most people have no idea what that is. So what is a DQF?
Okay, most people don't know what a driver qualification file is. So unlike a regular car accident case, trucking accidents are different because you have professional drivers on the road. And so we treat them differently and the law treats them differently. And what do I mean? Every trucking company is mandated, meaning they have to do it, comply with federal law. And there's a federal law in place when we talk about trucking companies that deals with trucks. And one of the things that we deal with is what you said earlier, a driver qualification file. So let me just give the site, and then we're going to talk about what's in that driver qualification file. So the Federal Motor Carrier Safety Regulations, they cite to what's called the Code of Federal Regulations. And that site is, for you legal scholars, it's 49 CFR 390 to 399 is what trucking regulations. We're going to focus on 391 for today. And that deals with the driver qualification file. And basically, that's a file that every trucking company must have on its driver. This isn't like arbitrary or they should do it. This is a must. You have to do it. If you're getting that DOT license and that MC, that motor carrier license, you have to have this file on every driver. And so what does that file entail? I'll just briefly talk about it. It entails pretty much a background on the driver, resume, safety history, all rolled into one. And if there's things that are missing, you're going to show those violations, and that can really blow up in the defense's case.
Are there any other documents that need to be in that DQF? You mentioned a few.
Yeah, it's a great question. It's a good follow-up. I should have talked about it earlier. But so basically, the Federal Motor Carrier Safety Administration requires a lot. And it requires a lot for a reason, because we talk again about there are so many truck accidents that happen on the road. So the Federal Motor Carrier Safety Administration says, hey, if you do your background, hopefully you don't have someone who is a bad driver, because not all truck drivers are bad drivers. Most of them are good drivers, right? So number one would be the driver's employment application. And that has to be a really detailed application. It is not what's your name and what's your driver's license.
Yeah.
That application will talk about where they've been employed in the past. And then not only that, the motor carrier has to go out and get those prior records from the prior motor carrier. So the prior trucking company, the one before. They then have to have the state motor vehicle records, because just because someone says, hey, I'm a good driver, the law says that's not enough. You need to pull those state motor carrier records to see, does this person really have a valid driver's license? How many other times have they been cited? How many crashes have they had? Again, this is all about safety. It all goes back to safety. There's a road test certificate. That should be in the driver's file as well. Also, the Federal Motor Carrier Safety Administration, this specific statute requires a medical certificate. And what do I mean? So the truck driver is going to have to go and get a clearance that they're allowed to drive. There are a lot of things that would disqualify someone from being able to drive. If they're paralyzed, if they have certain illnesses, they can't drive. If they're, sleep apnea with major driver fatigue, they shouldn't probably be driving. So they have to get cleared by a doctor or a nurse practitioner or a physician's assistant. Usually it's a physician's assistant or a doctor who clears them, fills out the form and clears them. Now, keep in mind, if the doctor just clears anybody, they could be on the hook too. So This is all, responsibility. We're trying to keep the roads safe. So they want to we talked about that employment application. You want to find out who are the prior employers, drug testing as well, and alcohol testing results. You want that in there. There should be an annual review where they're checking the driver's records, checking their records with the state to make sure. There should be a list of traffic violations if they've had traffic violations in the past. And then what I would want to see is a certification of those records that they got them and any violations. And then the last thing is their disciplinary records. Do they have any disciplinary issues? That should be in there too, because if this is a person who has problems, and when I say problems, maybe they have a drug addiction or maybe they're a violent person, this has to be in the file because this is what the company is responsible to do. Ensure that people like this don't get on the road. So people like you and I, Sophia, don't get killed while we're driving. We just want to get to work and back or wherever we're going.
So, what role does the DQF play after a truck crash, for example?
So remember how we said in one of our episodes, we said the motor carrier can be responsible. One of the ways was the vicarious liability, but another way is we talked about the negligent hiring, the negligent retention, and supervision. So if you're hiring someone and you haven't done the background on that person, well, guess what, trucking company? You could be at fault, not only for your driver causing the crash, but you could also be at fault for your negligently hiring a person who wasn't even qualified to drive or should have never driven. And that could lead to all types of other damages. If you have someone who is doing meth, we've had that case before. Surely they knew he was a drug addict, yet they still put him on the road. That subjects the trucking company to punitive damages. That's damages to punish them for what they did, not just damages for the injuries. So you have that. You would have failed drug tests there, bad driving record, not a valid medical card. Those could all be for negligent hiring, negligent supervision, negligent retention, especially if they're doing it during their employment. So that's how we would use one of the ways to use the driver qualification file against the trucking company. You want to make sure that their drivers are safe. So don't just look at how the crash occurred, look at what's going on behind that. This is the process of you got to dig until you find.
Good. I know in a previous episode you mentioned that there is AI monitoring of the drivers. Does that data end up in the DQF or is that housed someplace else?
It should in your disciplinary action. And if it doesn't, if you dig, you're going to have that's a great question, Sophia. You're going to have some really good questions for that safety director at the trucking company. Why didn't that make it into the file? Because if they're doing their annual review and that's not in the file, they think he's a great driver. But the AI is saying this guy nods off all the time. He's tired. He's driving crazy or she's driving crazy. But that's not in that disciplinary file within the driver qualification file, then that could be another reason the trucking company could be at fault. So again, you got to keep digging, don't stop, and they're going to fight you tooth and nail on everything. So you really got to take them to task, get those filed motions to compel. Don't give up because the insurance company and their lawyers are fighting you and they just don't want to pay. That's what they do. It's part of the process. If you're filing a lawsuit, expect them to be combative, expect them not to give you the insurance information, not to give you the driver's qualification file. They're going to fight you every step of the way. They're not going to make your life easy. So that's why, one, you need a lawyer, and you need a lawyer that's willing to fight and knows what they're doing.
What kind of red flags should attorneys be looking for when they get one of these DQFs?
So yeah, that driver qualification file, it's sort of like if you're hiring anyone, whatever type of employer you are, you're looking for red flags in that driver's application, right? So number one is, do they have any gaps in their employment history? That's important to know. And then you want to know why. Why is it that they have such a huge gap? Or why is it that they go months without having any work? Something doesn't sound right there. Are they missing their motor vehicle violations, or are they ignoring their violations? That's something, a red flag. Is their medical card, that medical certificate, is that expired? Another red flag. Obviously, they shouldn't be driving if they don't have clearance. Failed drug tests, that's important. Previous crashes, you want to know about that if you're hiring this person. Otherwise, you're going to get sued for negligent training or negligent hiring or negligent retention or supervision. Why are you putting these dangerous drivers on the road? Again, not all drivers are bad, but there are some that are. And that's why you have people just getting ridiculously hurt for no reason. The road test, do you have a real road test, or was it just some, we'll say, BS certification that they got online? And that happens. Are they doing their annual reviews? If they're not done, that's another problem. So I'll give you an example. We had a case. I got the driver qualification file. We're missing a ton of stuff. And so I started asking the safety director, where is all this information? And you go down the row, the row of what I just went through. And I'm like, how'd you find this guy, this driver? And he goes, I don't know. I'm like, what do you mean you don't know? Don't you have a process? Don't you put ads out there? I mean, where did you find them on Craigslist? And, obviously the guy got really pissed at me. He's like, no, I didn't find them on Craigslist. I'm like, okay. But it just sounded really bad that you don't even know where your drivers are coming from. And you can just tear them apart with that driver qualification file when they don't have their stuff in order. And they usually don't. So it's our job and our duty as lawyers to dig, and get the information out there. We've got to show that our client, hopefully your client's not at fault, but or you're not at fault if you're driving. You want to show that you're not at fault. And here's why you're not at fault. One, the driver's at fault, but two, look at the company. Look at what they're doing and what they're not doing.
So how do companies get away with these incomplete or bad DQFs, like not doing their due diligence on previous employers, that sort of thing?
Yeah, so, a lot of it is sloppiness, I would say. They're sloppy in their paperwork. This is just sometimes it's a rush to get drivers because they need drivers, so they're rushing to do that. They want to fill those seats. So, and it's a big problem. Sometimes there's a shortage of drivers, although now it seems like there's more drivers, and they're just doing a sloppy job with their paperwork, a sloppy job with doing the background research, a sloppy job with investigating the driver. That's kind of what you see a lot of, and unfortunately, that's a big problem in the trucking world that we're seeing.
So it sounds like there isn't really any oversight until something terrible happens.
Yeah. So basically, what happens is they have to police themselves, and you're required to do that. And so you're required to follow the law. Just like we all know, we shouldn't do certain things because that's what the law says. You're not supposed to kill people, right?
Right. Yeah.
Don't shoot people randomly. You can shoot, in a shooting range, but not people. Those are laws in place, and most people follow them. So if the law's in place and it requires a trucking company to have these files, you have to police yourself. And then when they don't have these files and a crash occurs, now we know why the crash occurs. They're sloppy with their driver qualifications files. They're sloppy with maintaining what needs to be maintained there. And what else are they sloppy about? Maybe following up on their AI, the telematics, following up on their driver to make sure their driver's doing the right thing. And they're probably sloppy about safety and their safety record. So it says a lot about a company when they don't follow these rules that are mandated to make sure that the roads are safe.
So if I'm an attorney representing an injury victim, how soon should I be asking for that DQF after the client shows up?
This is super important. And the trucking companies know this law. So under the law, and I believe it is, let me get the exact regulation. The law says on 390.15, so that's 49 CFR 390.15, the motor carriers must maintain for 3 years from the date of the accident. One, they have to maintain the accident register, but they also have to maintain these driver qualification files for 3 years. So if you don't ask for it within a 3-year period, that stuff's going to be gone. So what I would do immediately, as soon as you get that case, there's a preservation letter that has to go out. If you don't have one and you need one, I have one that I'm willing to share. Just email me and I'll get it over to you. Whether, again, you're representing a person who's been a victim of it or a family member, or you're doing it yourself, I'll gladly help because, again, there's information aside from the driver qualification file that needs to be maintained. And if you don't ask them to preserve it, it's gone. So that's bad for you if you're representing yourself or you're representing a person or a family. Now, you send that preservation letter out, and let's say they destroy that evidence. Now they've got a problem, right? Because they destroyed evidence. You can bring that up in your case. Why would someone destroy evidence? You're going to get what they call a presumption of negligence because they destroyed evidence, you may be able to strike their entire case so they don't have any defenses, especially if they got your preservation letter and they went out on their own and destroyed critical evidence to the case. So we do that in every case. Send out the preservation letters, make sure they get it, make sure it's by certified mail or by some sort of proof that you can prove that they got it, return receipt, FedEx, UPS, whatever means you can, but you have to have proof they got it. And then make sure you follow up. And don't just send the preservation letters to the trucking company. Send it to the driver as well. You want to get everything on that driver. You don't want any excuses.
So, as a final takeaway, what should people listening today remember about the driver qualification file?
So the driver qualification file is your roadmap to the truth, to really know what this company knew about their driver. Did they really know what was that driver's history? Did they follow up? So not just having that application for employment, but did they follow up and get those records from the prior employers to find out what was in their driver qualification file? Because they're all supposed to keep it, right, for 3 years. And if they're keeping their files, then you're going to have a nice little database to go after and determine what really happened in the hiring process, what really happened in the retention process. What due diligence did this trucking company do to ensure that their drivers are safe? So again, they don't make fast turns, they don't speed, they don't cause crashes, because ultimately we don't want dangerous drivers on the road, fatigued drivers on the road. We want the road safe. So, it'd be great if there were no accidents. Yeah, I wouldn't make money from doing trucking cases, but it's okay. We'd have a safer, society, and people wouldn't get injured and lives wouldn't change. But I don't think that's going to happen, because trucking companies will keep being trucking companies and sloppiness will continue to happen.
Thank you so much for your insights today. It's really opened up a world of possibilities.
Thanks for having me.
Thanks for tuning in to the Road to Recovery Advocacy and Insights for Trucking Accidents with Sagi Shaked. For more information or to connect with Sagi, visit shakedlaw.com, and don't forget to like, subscribe, and review.
Thanks for watching. Be sure to hit that like and subscribe button and leave us a review in the comments.